Hey there, and welcome to Tales by June, where hearts break, heal, and sometimes seek revenge. Let's begin today's story.
Hey, before we begin, let me know where you're watching from. I love seeing how far these stories travel. And if you enjoy this kind of content, don't forget to like, subscribe, and stay tuned for more.
They say heartbreak doesn't kill you. But standing in that ballroom, I swear I felt my pulse stop. The chandeliers above me looked like frozen fire, glittering, bright, too beautiful to belong to a night like this. Laughter echoed against the marble, crystal glasses clinked, and the scent of champagne floated through the air like a memory I didn't want. I stood near the edge of it all, tray in hand, the black and white caterer's uniform pressing tight against my ribs. My name tag, Mina, looked small and fake against the silver shimmer of the gowns around me. Every smile in that room had money behind it. Every word was polished, rehearsed, safe. And then, across the sea of glitter, I saw him. Ethan Vale. My ex. My mistake. And once, the man I thought I'd spend forever with. He stood at the center of it all, tall and confident, dressed in a tailored suit that probably cost more than my entire year's rent. Cameras pointed his way like he was born for it. The Vale heir. The perfect man. The one who used to whisper to me that he hated these kinds of parties, that he only wanted a simple life, that he wanted me. But that was before. Now, at his side, was Celeste Monroe, the woman who'd spent college trying to outshine me in everything. Smarter, richer, prettier. She'd won the scholarships I couldn't afford to lose. And now, it seemed, she'd won him too. I watched as the crowd hushed around them. Ethan raised his champagne glass high, the light catching the bubbles like gold dust. Tonight, he said, his voice smooth, charming, fake, I'm proud to announce my engagement to the woman who's changed my life. Applause. Cameras. Flashing lights. My heart didn't break. It froze like ice spreading through my chest. Because 3 months ago, he told me he wasn't like the others. That I was the only one who saw him beyond the money, beyond the fame. He used to call me his real world. 3 months ago, he promised me forever. 1 month ago, I found him in another woman's bed. And tonight, he was announcing his engagement. To her. The tray in my hands trembled. My throat burned, but I couldn't leave. I couldn't even breathe. He didn't look at me once, not even a flicker of recognition. It was like I didn't exist. Like I'd been erased from his story completely. And then it happened. Someone brushed past me, laughing, and my fingers slipped. The tray tilted. The champagne glasses crashed down, a sharp, ringing sound that sliced through the applause. Liquid splashed across the floor and onto Celeste's glittering gown. The room went silent. I froze. For a heartbeat, nobody moved. Then I looked up and met Ethan's eyes. For that 1 second, everything else disappeared. The noise, the lights, the people. Just him and me. His expression didn't show surprise or concern. Just annoyance. Like I was a problem he'd thought he'd already gotten rid of. His eyes said, "You never belonged here anyway." Mine said, "You'll regret this." Celeste gasped, staring down at her ruined dress, and I heard whispers spreading like wildfire. Someone hissed, "Who hired her?" Another voice laughed. My manager's face turned red from across the room, but I couldn't hear him. I couldn't hear anything. I wanted to disappear. I bent down, trying to collect the broken glass with shaking hands, but a guard stopped me. "It's fine, miss. Just step back. Step back." That's what I'd been doing ever since I met Ethan Vale. Always stepping back so he could shine. I stood there for one last second, and then walked out. The night air hit me like cold water. My hands smelled like champagne and humiliation. I walked down the long driveway of the Vale estate, heels clicking against the stone, the sound too loud, too sharp. Behind me, the music started again, as if nothing had happened. I kept walking until the mansion lights faded behind me. And as I reached the main road, I swore to myself I wouldn't cry. Not for him. Not for what we had. Not for the version of me that believed in him. But my voice cracked when I whispered, "You'll see me again." Because deep down, I knew I wasn't done. That night, I walked away from that world humiliated, a nobody in a stained uniform. But when I came back, I wasn't serving drinks anymore. I was the woman everyone wanted to meet. Before that night, before the champagne and the cameras, Ethan Vale wasn't a billionaire's son in my world. He was just Ethan, the boy who brought me coffee when I forgot to eat, the one who made me believe love could be simple. We met in college. I was working part-time at a campus cafe, juggling 3 jobs and a degree in business administration. He came in one rainy afternoon, drenched and smiling, asking for whatever's warm and sweet. I handed him a cup of hot chocolate and a cheap smile, the kind I saved for customers who looked lost. He came back the next day, and the day after that. At first, I didn't know who he was. He never mentioned his last name. He wore old sneakers and a hoodie with a tear at the sleeve. He talked about art, travel, and music like someone who had time to dream. I didn't. My days were a blur of deadlines, bills, and exhaustion. But he noticed me. Really noticed me. When I told him I didn't have time for distractions, he said, "Then I'll just have to make you coffee until you do." I laughed, but something about the way he looked at me made my heart pause. Like he saw something no one else bothered to. Weeks turned into months. We started studying together, talking until late in the library when the lights flickered. He'd tell me about his family, in pieces, how his father was strict, how his mother hosted charity galas, how he hated being treated like a symbol instead of a person. I thought he was exaggerating. I didn't realize he was the Ethan Vale, the heir to Vale Industries, a name printed on half the skyscrapers in the city. I found out by accident. One day, I was closing the cafe when a black car pulled up. A driver stepped out and said, "Mr. Vale, your father's waiting." I froze. Ethan's face went pale. That night, he called and apologized, saying he didn't want me to treat him differently. I didn't. At least, I tried not to. He said I grounded him. That with me, he could be just Ethan. And I believed him. He'd sneak me into private events, always quiet, always just for a little while. We'd stand on the balcony, away from everyone, and he'd whisper, "Someday, I'll walk in with you by my side, and they'll know you're the one." I wanted to believe that so badly. He was charming, generous, and restless. He'd bring me flowers when I was tired, and I'd cook him instant noodles because I couldn't afford anything else. We talked about opening a cafe together, a place where people like us, dreamers and workers, could feel at home. He'd hold my hand and say, "You're the best thing that's ever happened to me, Mina." And I thought that was enough. But love doesn't protect you from the world he came from. The first time I met his mother, she looked at me like I was a misplaced item, something that didn't belong in her perfectly curated home. She smiled, but it was the kind of smile that said, "I see through you." When she asked where I studied, and I told her, she said, "Oh, the public university." How practical. Ethan squeezed my hand under the table, but the damage was done. After that, I started noticing little things. His phone buzzing with messages he never explained. The sudden business trips that lasted longer than planned. The way he'd glance away when I mentioned the future. Still, I stayed. Because I thought love meant patience. Because I believed that when you truly see someone, you don't give up at the first shadow. Then came Celeste. She'd been his classmate once, polished, confident, with the kind of charm that money buys. She ran a startup his family invested in, and suddenly, Ethan was working with him. More often than he was with me. He said it was all business. That I was imagining things. That I didn't trust him enough. I wanted to. God, I wanted to. But every time I saw them together, the way she laughed a little too easily, the way his hand rested a little too close, my stomach twisted. Still, I convinced myself it was jealousy. I told myself love was supposed to hurt a little. And when he looked at me with those soft eyes and said, "You're the only one who knows me," I silenced every doubt in my head. Maybe that's why it hurt so much later, because I'd already forgiven him for things I didn't even know he'd done. Looking back now, I think the truth was always there, hiding in the way he avoided saying we. It was always my plans, my family, my future. I just didn't want to see it. Because I was the girl who believed that love could rewrite the rules. That if I worked hard enough, if I loved deeply enough, I could belong in his world. But his world didn't want me. And eventually, neither did he. It started with a lie so small, I almost let it slide. Ethan said he was working late business dinner, he called it. The same excuse he'd used 3 times that month. His voice sounded tired, practiced. But something about the way he said, "I'll call you later," didn't sound like a promise anymore. It sounded like a dismissal. That night, I couldn't sleep. The city outside my window was alive, horns, laughter, rain, but inside me, everything was still. Too still. My gut twisted with that quiet kind of fear you can't explain. I told myself not to be paranoid. That love required trust. That Ethan wouldn't do that to me. But my heart already knew. The next evening, I decided to surprise him. I told myself I just wanted to drop off his favorite muffins, the ones I baked when he was stressed. But deep down, I was looking for something else, reassurance, maybe. Truth, maybe. His family's downtown hotel glowed like a tower of glass and gold. I felt small walking through the marble lobby, my reflection broken in the shiny floors. The receptionist recognized his name instantly. "Mr. Vale's in the private lounge," she said. Private lounge. That should have been my first warning. The hallways smelled like expensive perfume. Laughter floated through the door ahead, soft, flirtatious. I froze when I heard her voice. Celeste. My hands started to shake, the paper bag crumpling in my grip. I pushed the door open just an inch. And there they were. Ethan sat close to her, his jacket off, tie loose, his hand brushing hers as they laughed over a half-finished bottle of wine. She leaned in, whispering something that made him smile, that smile. The one he used to save for me. Then she kissed him. And he didn't stop her. He kissed her back. For a moment, the world went silent. All I could hear was the sound of my own breathing, fast, uneven, broken. I dropped the bag, the muffins scattering across the floor, and the sound made them both turn. Celeste didn't even look guilty. She just raised her eyebrow, like I'd interrupted something trivial. Ethan's smile faded, but not into regret, into irritation. "Mina," he said, like my name was an inconvenience. I stepped into the room, every nerve in my body screaming. "This is what you call a business dinner?" Celeste smirked. "You really shouldn't show up uninvited. It's embarrassing." Her words sliced through me, but I couldn't look at her. I only looked at him. "You told me you loved me," I whispered. Ethan leaned back, sighing. "Mina, don't make this dramatic. You knew it wasn't going to last forever." I blinked. "What?" He looked right through me. "You're a great girl. But come on, did you really think this was going somewhere? That I could marry you?" It was the way he said it, like it was a joke. Like the idea of me standing beside him in his world was absurd. Celeste laughed softly, her manicured hand brushing his arm. I felt the air leave my lungs. My vision blurred, my throat burned, but I still managed to say, "I believed in you." Ethan's face hardened. "That's your mistake, Mina. You keep believing in people who don't owe you anything." Then he turned away. Just like that. I stood there for another second, waiting for something, an apology, a look, anything. But there was nothing left for me in that room. Not even respect. I walked out before the tears came. I didn't remember how I got home. I just remember sitting on my bed, still wearing my coat, staring at the wall until the sun came up. The muffins were still in the paper bag, cold and untouched. For the next week, I disappeared. I stopped answering calls. My friends came by, but I pretended not to be home. I didn't want anyone to see what was left of me. I blamed myself for everything, for loving him too much, for ignoring the signs, for dreaming too big. I replayed his words over and over. "Did you really think I could marry you?" Each time, it cut deeper. And then one morning, I looked at my reflection and didn't recognize myself. My eyes were dull, my face tired, my heart empty. That's when it hit me. I'd built my entire life around a man who never intended to stay. So I made a choice. No more waiting. No more begging to belong. I poured all that pain into something else, me. I finished my degree early. I studied harder than I ever had before. Every late night, every cup of cheap coffee, every tear I refused to shed, it became fuel. I applied for jobs relentlessly, even when I doubted myself. And one day, I got it. My dream job. Marketing associate at a company I'd admired for years. It wasn't glamorous, but it was mine. My first paycheck felt like a heartbeat, proof that I could survive without him. Proof that I could build something real. That's when I realized love can destroy you, but it can also rebuild you if you let it. And I wasn't done rebuilding. Starting over isn't as dramatic as people make it sound. It's not about cutting your hair or burning old photos. It's about waking up one morning, realizing you have nothing left, and deciding to keep moving anyway. After Ethan, I promised myself I'd focus only on what I could control. My studies, my work, my future. I didn't care about love or fate or anyone's promises anymore. I wanted stability, something no one could take from me. My last semester of college was brutal. I studied during the day and worked nights at a small restaurant near the river. The uniform was itchy, the tips were unpredictable, and the customers treated me like I was invisible. But I didn't complain. It was honest work, and that mattered to me. Some nights, after closing, I'd sit outside with my notebook, writing goals I barely believed in. Graduate with honors. Find a good job. Be someone they can't ignore. Every time I felt myself slipping, I remembered Ethan's words. Did you really think I could marry you? They used to break me. Now, they pushed me. By the time graduation came, I had offers from 2 small companies. I chose one that felt right, not glamorous, but steady. It paid enough for a small apartment with peeling paint and creaky floors, but it was mine. My space. My peace. For the first time, I wasn't living in anyone's shadow. But life has a strange way of testing you when you least expect it. It started with a catering job. My boss at the restaurant asked if I could help at a high-profile event. Good pay, fancy place, he said. Just one night. I didn't think twice. Rent was due. I needed the money. I didn't ask whose event it was. When I arrived, the mansion lights nearly blinded me. Chandeliers glittered from every ceiling. Silk gowns floated past like colors in a dream. I recognized the logo on the banners, Vail Industries Annual Gala. My heart stopped. For a second, I thought about leaving. I could have turned around, said I got sick, and disappeared. But then I looked down at my hands, calloused, steady, and remembered how far I'd come. I wasn't here as his ex. I was here as someone earning her way. So I squared my shoulders, tied my apron, and stepped inside. The ballroom was alive, laughter, music, and that faint hum of power people carry when they know they belong. I didn't belong, but I moved like I did. I served champagne, smiled politely, and kept my head down. Every tray I lifted was a reminder that I was working, surviving, rebuilding. And then I heard his voice. I turned, and there he was, Ethan Vail. Same charming smile. Same confidence. But now, beside him stood Celeste Monroe, her hand resting possessively on his arm. She looked exactly how I remembered, perfect, polished, untouchable. My chest tightened, but I didn't move. I told myself I didn't care, that I'd outgrown this pain. But when I saw him laughing, toasting, surrounded by cameras, I realized how easily he'd moved on. How easily he'd forgotten me. I stayed professional. I kept serving drinks, ignoring the whispers and laughter that floated near their corner. But the universe wasn't done humiliating me. My manager pushed a tray of champagne glasses into my hands. Take these to the main table, he said. I didn't know that table belonged to them. My steps slowed as I approached. Ethan turned slightly, eyes sweeping the room, and landed on me. For a split second, I saw recognition flicker there. Then it vanished. He looked through me like I was part of the decor. Celeste noticed. She leaned in and whispered something to him. He chuckled. I couldn't hear the words, but I didn't need to. I could read her lips. Pathetic. That was the moment something inside me snapped, not in anger, but in clarity. I realized I didn't need to prove anything to them. I just needed to rise high enough that one day, they'd see me and regret every word, every laugh, every cruel smirk. My hands trembled slightly, but I managed to set the tray down. I turned to leave. And then someone bumped into me. The tray tipped. The glasses fell. The rest, you already know. The crash, the silence, the champagne staining Celeste's $1,000 gown. The stares. His cold, unbothered eyes. The moment he made me feel small again. But that night didn't break me. It remade me. As I walked out of the mansion, humiliated and shaking, I made a vow not out loud, but deep inside my bones. I would work harder than ever. I would build a life so strong, so unshakable, that no one could ever make me feel like I didn't belong again. They could laugh now, but one day, they would remember my name. That night, as the city lights blurred through my tears, I whispered to myself, "You're done being the girl who waits. You're becoming the woman who wins." And that was the start of everything. Leaving that city was the easiest decision I ever made. I packed 2 suitcases, 1 box of books, and the last of my savings. No plan, no promises, just a simple belief that somewhere I could start again. The train to Brookhaven felt endless, but for the first time in years, I wasn't running from anything. I was running towards something. The city greeted me with chaos, horns, skyscrapers, crowds that didn't know my name. And that was exactly what I wanted. Anonymity. Freedom. I rented a tiny apartment above a bakery. The walls were thin, the heater barely worked, but every morning smelled like fresh bread. It felt like a beginning. I got a job as a junior marketing assistant at a mid-sized firm. Long hours, low pay, and more coffee than sleep, but it was mine. I worked harder than anyone else in that office. I volunteered for projects no one wanted. I stayed late, took notes, learned everything I could. At first, no one noticed me. Then one day, they did. My first big break came when our senior manager fell sick before a major presentation. I stepped in. I was terrified, my hands trembling as I spoke, but I knew my work inside out. When I finished, the clients clapped. My boss smiled for the first time. That day, I realized something. Confidence isn't something people give you. You build it, piece by piece, every time you choose not to give up. Months passed. Then a year. Then 2. I climbed from assistant to executive, then to project lead. I was promoted again, not because I was lucky, but because I'd earned it. My name started showing up in meetings, in client calls, even in magazines. People started asking for me. For the first time, I wasn't the girl behind someone's success story. I was the story. I bought new clothes that actually fit my style, clean lines, muted colors, confidence stitched into every seam. I moved into a better apartment, one with windows that caught the sunrise. I'd wake up early, sip my coffee, and smile at the skyline that had once scared me. I still thought about Ethan sometimes. Not with anger, just curiosity. One day, I saw a headline online. Ethan Vale marries Celeste Monroe in lavish ceremony. Their photos were everywhere. Her diamond ring, his perfect smile, the same look he used to give me. I didn't cry. I just stared at the screen and whispered, "You deserve each other." Because by then, I finally understood I wasn't the one who lost. I was the one who got free. In those 2 years, I built a life he couldn't touch. I traveled for work, learned to speak in boardrooms full of people who once would have ignored me. I learned that respect earned through hard work lasts longer than love built on empty promises. But it wasn't just success. It was peace. I learned to love my own company. I filled my weekends with books, late-night walks, quiet dinners with friends. I didn't need anyone to tell me I belonged. I already did. Sometimes, I'd catch my reflection and hardly recognize the woman staring back, steadier, sharper, kinder. Not because I'd stopped feeling, but because I'd stopped letting pain define me. I remember one evening, after landing a major campaign, my boss took me aside. "Mina," he said, "you have something rare. People trust you the moment you speak. You don't talk like someone chasing approval. You talk like someone who already has it." That stayed with me. Because that was the moment I realized I'd become the person I used to dream of being, someone unshakable. When I walked into rooms now, people noticed. They leaned in when I spoke. They remembered my name. And though no one in that city knew where I came from or what I'd survived, it didn't matter. I carried my scars quietly, like proof of everything I'd overcome. 2 years had passed since that night at the ballroom. 2 years since the girl in the uniform spilled champagne on the woman who took everything from her. But that girl didn't exist anymore. Now, when people looked at me, they didn't see a caterer or a heartbreak. They saw confidence, grace, power. They saw Mina Vale not by name, but by strength. And maybe someday, even he would see it too. 7 years. That's how long it took to rebuild my life, brick by brick, piece by piece. When I look back now, it doesn't even feel real. That girl who once walked out of a mansion covered in spilled champagne, she feels like another lifetime. Another version of me, softer, hungrier for love, still waiting for someone to see her worth. That girl is gone. Now, people call me Mina Hart, director of marketing at one of the top firms in the country. My campaigns have won awards. My name shows up in business magazines, podcasts, panels. Sometimes, I still wake up at dawn and think of how far I've come from waitressing in silence to speaking on stages filled with applause. And the best part? I did it on my own terms. No shortcuts. No handouts. No Ethan Vale. When the invitation arrived, I almost laughed. Vale Industries, annual charity gala. A full-circle moment wrapped in gold foil. At first, I wanted to decline. I didn't owe anyone my presence, least of all them. But then I thought about that night, the champagne, the laughter, the humiliation. I didn't want to erase it. I wanted to rewrite it. So I went. The ballroom was even grander than I remembered, chandeliers glowing like constellations, violins playing softly in the background. I wore a sleek black gown, simple but powerful, the kind that didn't need to prove anything. People recognized me this time, not as a caterer, but as a guest. A name. A reputation. I was introduced to investors, executives, even journalists who wanted interviews. For the first hour, it felt like any other gala. Until I heard her laugh. Celeste Monroe Vale. She looked exactly the same, maybe a little more polished, a little colder. Her husband, Ethan, stood beside her, the picture of corporate perfection. They were the couple everyone admired. But as I watched them from across the room, I realized something. They looked bored. Like two people performing a role they'd grown tired of playing. I wasn't nervous. Not this time. I didn't need to hide or shrink. So when the host approached me and said, "Mina, let me introduce you to the Valles," I smiled and said, "Of course." Ethan's face shifted the moment he saw me. A flicker of recognition. Shock. Maybe even guilt. Celeste, on the other hand, smiled wide, that fake, too perfect kind of smile. "Mina Hart," she said, her tone syrupy sweet. "It's been so long. You look different. I almost didn't recognize you." "I could say the same," I replied, calm, smiling. But then again, some things never change. She laughed tightly, glancing around to make sure others were watching. "I read about you recently," she said. "You've done well for yourself. From waitress to director, quite the leap." Her words hung in the air, sharp and deliberate. A subtle jab. The crowd around us went quiet, waiting for my reaction. I didn't give her what she wanted. "Yes," I said softly, holding her gaze. "Life has a funny way of rewarding hard work. Some of us earn our place, others marry into it." A few people coughed to hide their laughter. Ethan's joy tightened. Celeste's smile faltered, but she recovered quickly. "Well, it's lovely to see you doing well," she said. "Ethan and I are very involved in charity now. Giving back, you know. It's so fulfilling." "I'm sure it is," I said. "It must feel nice to finally give something after taking so much." Her expression froze for a split second, just enough for me to see it. That tiny crack in her confidence. I turned to Ethan then, and for the first time in years, I looked into his eyes, not as the girl who loved him, but as the woman who'd outgrown him. "Mr. Vale," I said politely, "I hope business is treating you well. It seems you've built quite a brand." He hesitated. "Mina, I don't," I said quietly, still smiling. "You don't owe me an apology. You taught me something valuable, how to see through people who pretend to care." He looked like he wanted to say more, but I didn't give him the chance. I turned to the group, graceful and composed. "Excuse me," I said. "I promised to speak with the investors from the Greenwell Foundation." And I walked away. The music swelled behind me as I crossed the ballroom, the same ballroom where, years ago, I'd been invisible. Now, heads turned as I passed. People smiled, greeted me, offered their cards. I wasn't the girl with a tray anymore. I was the woman with a purpose. Later that night, as I stood on the terrace watching the city lights, I caught sight of them again, Ethan and Celeste. They looked smaller now, quieter. Celeste's laugh didn't sound as confident, and Ethan's gaze lingered on me just a moment too long. I didn't feel anger or revenge, just peace. Because the truth is, I didn't come back to prove anything to them. I came back to remind myself how far I'd come and how far I'd never fall again. And as I raised my glass of champagne, the same drink that once marked my humiliation, I whispered to myself, to the girl who fell and the woman who rose. People love stories that end in revenge. But real life isn't always about revenge. Sometimes, the best payback is peace and success that speaks for itself. After that gala, I didn't think much about Ethan or Celeste. They became background noise, like a song I'd once known all the words to but had outgrown. Still, I'd hear things from time to time. They were still married, power couple on the outside, rumors of cracks on the inside. He was chasing business expansions, she was chasing attention. From the photos in magazines, their smiles looked perfect, but their eyes didn't. Then, one morning, everything changed. I woke up to hundreds of messages. My phone wouldn't stop buzzing. Notifications, tags, mentions, all linking to one thing, a picture. A picture of me. It was old from my waitress days, wearing that black and white uniform, carrying a tray. Someone had written a caption over it. From waitress to wannabe, fake success story exposed. It spread fast. Blogs picked it up. Some mocked me. Others speculated about my hidden past. For a few hours, the internet treated me like a joke. I sat there, scrolling through the comments, my chest tight. And then, I saw one account sharing the photo first, Celeste Monrovale's private circle. Of course! It didn't surprise me. This was her game, the same woman who once smiled while watching me fall. But I wasn't that girl anymore. This time, I didn't hide. I didn't cry. I spoke. That evening, I opened my social media and posted a single thread with 3 photos, one of me as a waitress, one of me in my office, and one of me giving a keynote speech. And I wrote, "Yes, that's me. 7 years ago, I worked nights as a waitress while finishing my degree. I wasn't embarrassed then. And I'm not embarrassed now. Every tray I carried, every hour I worked, built the woman I am today. Some people think your past defines your limits. I believe it defines your strength. If you've ever been looked down on for doing honest work, don't hide it. Be proud of it. Because every small beginning is proof that you had the courage to start." I hit post. And then I waited. Within hours, my phone exploded again. But this time, it wasn't hate. It was love. Thousands of comments poured in. People wrote things like, "You just gave me the courage to apply for my dream job. I'm crying. I needed this reminder today. You're what real success looks like." Major pages reposted it. News outlets called it the viral story of resilience. My follower count doubled overnight. I didn't just defend myself, I inspired others. And just like that, Celeste's little plan backfired spectacularly. I heard later, through a mutual acquaintance, that Ethan and Celeste had a massive fight over it. He told her the stunt was embarrassing and pathetic. She'd screamed that I deserved to be exposed. Their argument made headlines when a recording leaked her voice shrill, his voice cold. The internet turned on her. Brands pulled sponsorships. Her reputation cracked. And for the first time, I didn't feel pity. I felt closure. Because I didn't need to destroy her. She did that herself. All I had to do was stand tall and tell my truth. In the days that followed, people kept writing to me, students, single mothers, waiters, dreamers. They said my story gave them hope. And I realized something beautiful. My pain had turned into purpose. That was the real ending I wanted all along. Not revenge. Not validation. Just peace and a reason to keep growing. One weekend, I visited my old cafe, the place where it all began. The owner recognized me instantly. "You used to study here all night," he said with a smile. I laughed. And now I still work all night, just in better lighting. As I left, I looked back at the small, warm lights of the cafe and felt gratitude instead of sadness. Every mistake, every heartbreak, every sleepless night, it all led here. Now, I speak at events about resilience, about rising after falling. People call me inspiring, but I always say I'm not special. I just refuse to stay broken. Because the truth is, strength isn't something you find one day. It's something you build, quietly, every time the world tries to tear you down and you choose to rise anyway. So when people ask me how I did it, how I survived humiliation, heartbreak, betrayal, I smile and tell them, I didn't just survive. I transformed. And every time I lift a glass of champagne now, I think back to that night. To the girl who spilled it. To the woman who now owns the room. And I whisper, here's to every ending that made room for a better beginning.